A low-budget bodyguard is chosen by God to survive a serial killer's attack before a seemingly chance encounter seems too good to be true.
Somebody write this.
Hi, and welcome to Somebody Write This, where we use a random plot generator to give us an idea and then brainstorm how that could be a thing somebody might want to write. I'm Hannah.
And I'm Jenny.
And to help us with our brainstorming today, we have a guest. Welcome, Elisebeth.
Hi!
We're so excited you can join us today. As I was talking with Jenny about, and with you about your writing history and the stories that you like to study, I love that you have an area of expertise that we haven't really dealt with before. You've worked a lot with medieval studies and medieval stories and with mythology and fairy tales, so I want to take a second to talk a little bit about your take on that. I saw that you have written dissertations on King Arthur and Robin Hood. These are both characters who have been adapted so many times into their own stories, into modern versions and musicals and every different iteration of it you can expect is out there. From all the work you've done with them, is there something that you are still just waiting to see the next big adaptation of either one of these tackle? A spin that you think they miss all the time, or a detail that never gets in there? What are you just aching to see in your next King Arthur or Robin Hood adaptation?
I actually don't know. To be honest, I'm more surprised at what people have already done, because the more you go into it, the more just amazed that I am by people's creativity. Seeing Robin Hood in space, seeing King Arthur as a woman, as the president, everything that they do. My first dissertation was actually about Arthurian religion, in that there are sects of paganism that use the characters of Arthurian mythology, and I do use that word with qualifications, as the gods and goddesses of their religion. Wow. Yeah, that was originally what drew me to it, the idea that you can take something that has just been thought of as a story, a fiction for so long, and have it be something that people commit to so sincerely and wholeheartedly.
That's really cool.
Do you have a personal favorite version of either one of these stories, or do you just love all of them?
Okay, I will tell you that the BBC is what brought me to my first master's degree. I watched the show Merlin, and that led me to study the character of Nimue, and that's how I found out that she was a goddess in Arthurian religions. And so I was looking at the different iterations of her over the years, how she went from being a wise woman, how she was demonized and villainized by the Victorians, who literally turned her into a whore, and then having her come back as a goddess is just fascinating. But that's not the point. You were asking me about that. So Merlin of the BBC.
Yeah.
And Robin Hood, I have so many versions that bring so many things to it. Can I give shout-outs to the worst?
Yes, I would love to hear the worst.
Okay, well, first of all, there is Robin Hood and Zombies, a German version where Robin Hood, he sits down and he shares how to be a socialist to the camera. And then, at the end, out of nowhere, they're attacked by the merry men who have been turned into zombies. It is just fascinating. And then the second one, TNT, the same people who did Xena and Hercules, did a version of Robin Hood. The first episode is Robin Hood and the Mongols. And yes, Mongols come to Sherwood Forest to attack. Everything from the clothing, which is the tiny little Greek skirts for men and women, down to the plot, and oh my gosh, like the writing, you cannot believe the cheesy writing. It is just gem of the worst.
That sounds so horrific, I might have to find it.
I would suggest, yeah.
I love seeing how very creative people get with this. I'm a theater person, and I love doing that with Shakespeare. I love seeing the so many different ways and tactics and adaptations that people use to take these characters that we've known for centuries and put new spins on them. In terms of looking at these older stories, mythology and fairy tales, these were told to teach stories and to sometimes to explain the world. And what is the primary value for us in studying these stories today? If they have do they have a different meaning than they do today? Do they have different purposes? What do we get out of them today, do you think?
There are actually quite a few things that we can get out of them. Thank you for sending me into my dissertation here, my little high horse.
Yes. I figured this would be applicable.
One of the reasons that Robin Hood is so important is because Robin Hood is a symbol of British nationalism. And Robin Hood is a brand that is recognized worldwide. People come to England to walk in the same places that a fictional character walked. And it gives, there are studies about prisons all over Britain where the inmates say, I'm Robin Hood, man. I'm Robin Hood because I stole that stereo and I gave the money to people who needed it. And it gives them a sense of community and a sense of national pride. If you're looking at it from a religious perspective, you can learn religious things. That it's actually a growing religion, people coming to Arthurianism. And so, if nothing else, I think that it's always fascinating to look at different religions and see the ways that they match up and see the ways that they vary. When I did start learning about it, I was really impressed by the more equality between male and female roles in Arthurian religion, whereas most Christian religions seem to be very male-centric. This really it needs both men and women to work, which I like a lot. And then if you really want to know what a country values, look at the stories that it tells its children. Everything from you're watching toys run across a screen and you are learning that loyalty is important. The kids are sitting there learning, okay, well, I should always stick by my friends the same way that Woody and Buzz stick together. From so many different points of views, they're really relevant today. And frankly, they're just fun. And
yeah,
it's like they say at the end of The Greatest Showman, making people smile is a value. In a world that is dark and scary, having something that lifts and entertain you is worthwhile in and of itself.
I like that a lot. Final question on this. What stories do you think that we are telling more currently might end up in that sort of pantheon of mythology and fairy tale centuries down the road?
Oh, that's a good one. Harry Potter clearly has already been added to that.
That was my first thought.
Yes.
Yeah, there's no way that one's going away. And I am a big fan of Harry Potter as well, and just the amount of mythology that is already bred and woven into those stories. So I would say that one is number one. And frankly, I know that Disney's not going anywhere either. So you've already started to see, after Mulan came out, I started seeing cultural performances of countries that really didn't have anything to do with the story performing the story of Mulan as part of their culture. So if it's Disney, it's going to be adapted and it's going to be retold.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Elise. It's just a level of expertise on an area that we haven't had a chance to really talk about here on the show before. So thank you so much. Before we jump into our plot again, we have just two little pieces of housekeeping. First of all, we got another writer submission that I want to be able to read a piece of. Actually, I'm going to read the whole thing because what we got a sonnet. Based on our second episode, The Computer, the Useless. That was the one about Marie the Angel and the seasoned cameraman who sabotaged the lorry because he was angry. We got a submission from Kevin McGill about this one, which was a sonnet. So I want to go ahead and share this. We're going to put it on our blog as well, but I'm just going to go ahead and read the whole thing because sonnets are short, and I want you to be able to hear the different ways that people are taking this. So this is the sonnet based on The Computer, the Useless. Ah, Marie, you are an angel twice, acting also who you are to me. I captured every second horribly as the lorry slid across the ice, toppling, rolling one time, two times, thrice. Useless automated CAV, computer navigating pointlessly, but it was you who paid the heavy price. And I boldly seized my chance to land a blow against the growing robot craze, to upload malware to the lorry, and the hubris wreckage lies before my gaze. I've ended so much more than I had planned. So who is useless now, and now who pays? So I will go ahead and put that up on our blog as well so that you can read it. Continue sending us submissions, listeners. As you see, we love anything that comes out of this, and we would love to share pieces of it on the podcast and share whatever you'd be willing to have us share on the blog as well. The other thing I want to make sure and mention, because we haven't mentioned it on the podcast yet, is we also have a Facebook page. We did set this up a couple of weeks ago, and so we post our new episodes up there. We also have been known to occasionally put out a call for guests on there. So if you're interested in guesting on the podcast, make sure you follow us. The URL is just Somebody Write This, but you can also just search Somebody Write This podcast, and it will show up, and you'll be able to find that. So, with all that, we are going to go ahead and we're going to jump into our story. So, as a reminder, our plot is a low-budget bodyguard is chosen by God to survive a serial killer's attack before a seemingly chance encounter that seems too good to be true.
I'm seeing this. Are you guys familiar with the show Lucifer?
A little bit. I've seen some.
I'm seeing this as more of a Lucifer-type god where he's kind of manipulative and not really the sweet loving god, but one who's always got his hand in things and has always got an extra plot and plan and very good at planning ahead. So he definitely chose this guy for a purpose later on and maybe wants him to feel indebted, or he needed the power of having a miracle to save him to face something later on.
So if that's our God character, are we leading toward a confrontation of some sort?
Do we need to figure out why he's chosen to survive a serial killer's attack?
I think so.
Yeah. This is what I think we're going to have to untangle a tiny bit at a time, because I keep just looking at it going, what do we do with this?
There is something that that God needs him to do later on.
Yes.
And the fact that he was chosen seems like it's not that he was destined or fated to do it, but God was like, I need somebody
to survive this attack.
So you're it.
Okay, but what if it's somebody needed to survive the attack for a reason?
Yeah.
Like it's not that the bodyguard had something to do afterwards, it's that for some reason someone needed to survive a serial killer attack. Is it maybe to catch the serial killer, for instance. Maybe there needed to be a witness. Or is it a miraculous sort of survival that is going to be assigned to somebody? Is it going to does it
Yeah.
I'm actually picturing him dying for a minute, seeing God and having God tell him,
and God's like, back down you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so not survive unscathed.
Yeah, and so then he comes back. And that power of him having died and come back, and that power of having a miracle happen, changes him and his very nature. Maybe it attracts the attention of some less desirable, demons and whatnot. Or maybe it just changes because he has been changed, then the future is changed. And he attracts these seemingly chance encounters.
So the chance encounters are a direct result of his death and resurrection.
So now he, because of the nature of his existence, having come back like this, is this guy just attracting miracles around him?
Or maybe he keeps encountering certain types of people, maybe people who are going to be victims of something. People have had murderous thoughts toward or something. He keeps running into them. And so he finds he has a chance to prevent their murders by warning them or something. Maybe it's some kind of thing like that. These seemingly chance encounters all have a pattern. And once he figures out that pattern, he can change the world in a better way.
Yeah, well, that's like in Ghost Town, how once Ricky Gervais dies, he can see dead people, whereas this time, once he dies, he is attracted to people who are going to die.
Oh, that's dark and interesting.
Ooh.
for him to realize this, it means that there's going to have to be a couple of times where this happens before he can warn them. So he's going to have to like have times where like he has like 3 people who he just met who go missing or are found, and he's like, what's going on?
Ooh, well, and if this is gonna happen, I'm feeling that one of them, he starts dating this woman and he's really attracted to her, and they actually go on a couple of dates before she's murdered, just to really like stab the knife in a little bit more.
And this adds an extra layer too, because like if this becomes a thing that he meets people and then they die, like that makes him incredibly suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
Like at the same time, you've got our antagonist, I guess, who is, you know, a detective who's investigating maybe the same serial killer and is starting to be suspicious of this person, starting to put pieces together in a way that makes total sense, except it's wrong.
So the serial killer is still at large after he survives, or is this another serial killer?
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought there was a serial killer. We could connect. We don't have to.
Well, because that's a good question. Because like, what if it's, you know, they always like there are copycats, right? So what if there's somebody who is going to copycat the first serial killer and then learns about this guy and starts using him as the trigger to choose his victims?
So it could be like one long finding the murderer story, and that we think ends and then continues.
Though I do wonder, like, after the first murderers died, is this something that this guy is doomed to for the rest of his life? Or is it that he was sent for a specific time period to get that specific bad guy, and then it's over?
Yeah, is this just his mission forever now? That he is, if he encounters somebody, there's a good chance there, you know, or maybe there's like a specific way that he encounters them that clues him in, like, this person is going to be murdered.
I can see this poor guy, like, being so paranoid about, like, leaving his house.
Right.
Don't talk to me! I'm a stranger! You know,
well, like, I feel like you could almost do, like, the entire, like, middle section of Groundhog Day, which is just him, like, experimenting with the different things that this means and trying different things. I feel like that's almost what happens here. Like, he tries different ways to do things, and it's just like, I don't know what's happening. Like, maybe if I stay inside, nothing will happen.
Right, like, how do I live my life so that I don't kill people?
Somebody comes to the door and he doesn't answer and they leave, and then he finds out that was the person. So he's like, there's no escaping it. It's gonna happen. Yeah, I kind of like the idea of it being all... Yeah, maybe one specific... If it's one specific person, it has an end point. Like, it has an end goal.
It changes the nature of it, because if there's one specific person, then it's an adventure story. And if it is a forever thing, then it's a horror story. Because this guy will never get better, and his entire life will be full of this terrible thing. So yeah, it goes very dark, or it can be very, like, upbeat and yay, let's finish this one thing and then I'll be free.
And maybe you can play with a little bit of both. You can maybe have it be like mostly we're gonna find this one person, but then maybe God's like, but I could turn this back on anytime I need to. Like almost like you still owe me, you're still alive.
Or the sequel.
Oh gosh.
Or the sequel. The sequel, yeah. I think I'm going to toss in the title because I think we may need a couple minutes to figure out what to do with it. Okay?
Okay.
So our title is A Night on a Satellite Station in Mars, which is not our setting at all.
We just went to Mars last time.
We did. We just went to Mars in our last video, so I don't want to do that again. I want this to be metaphorical somehow.
Okay.
What if this is where what if the guy works at a virtual reality simulator?
Oh.
Okay.
So people come to him.
And then here's the other thing I thought. Is it night, N-I-G-H-T, or is it knight?
It's with an N.
Okay.
Just an N.
I got excited because we were talking about Arthurian legend, and then you said a knight.
So if he works at a virtual reality thing, he, hands out the goggles to people, and that's how he meets all of these people.
He is also a low-budget bodyguard.
Oh, yeah.
So... But was he a bodyguard and then gave that up after being attacked? Like maybe he still has physical symptoms and can't. Maybe he's not up to physical stance of being able to be a bodyguard anymore. So maybe he gets this job, virtual reality.
What if he was working security for like NASA or some other sort of scientific thing that was studying Mars and has like a fake Mars setup? Okay. They do have like Mars simulations to try to see if people could survive on Mars. And I mean, they're highly secure, so that would be...
Yeah. And this wouldn't even necessarily need to be the setting of the entire place, as long as it was the setting during a time that was thematically important. So, like, maybe this is where he is when he gets attacked and survives the attack. And that's, like, the night that changes everything kind of thing.
Yep.
So you could make that... So he doesn't have to necessarily live in the Mars simulator or be there all the time. We don't need all the murders to happen there, because... That's tricky.
Right.
You'd think eventually they just put up a guard there and be like, nope. But I think that could be, this one does have like a singular point at which there is a before and after, a distinctive point in time. And I think if that point in time, this is the night on the satellite station on Mars.
Where this is the night where I died and talked to God and came back to life.
Yeah.
And now my life is completely different.
Oh, I'm actually reading the intro right now. To make it sound as weird and unrelatable as possible. This is what happened to me.
Right.
I died. I came back. I talked to God. And the whole thing happened on Mars.
Exactly.
Whoa, very nice.
Like, isn't that, it's great. So this is, like, that's definitely, like this voiceover moment.
And then you see the camera like panning out and showing that's not actually Mars; it's set in a room.
Yeah.
You know?
So it shows him lying on the ground, bleeding everywhere,
dead on Mars.
And then and then he abruptly sits back up, is fine
with a gasp,
and then it pans out and he's not on Mars. So it starts off setting up, this is what happened, and then being like undo.
I would totally watch that based on that opening.
That's a strong start there.
Also, I'm saying if he keeps being a bodyguard, he's got to be the worst bodyguard ever. If people around him keep dying, and if people around him are always being targeted by serial killers or murderers.
You're right.
It does say he's a low budget bodyguard.
Very low budget.
Gosh, very low. Oh.
Which isn't his fault, because everybody, normally their biggest threats are like people are going to harass them with cameras, whereas this guy is always up against murderers.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, like nobody hired this guy.
It's true. Which again gives him an even stronger reason to, I have to get this done and find this so that I can be finished with this forever. Right. Well, we are just about at the end of our time discussing this, but I like this. I think this is a really interesting piece. Is there any like major piece that you think we're missing?
Does God keep coming back to talk to him periodically?
That's a good question.
Is this a one-time thing, or does he regularly see God?
That's a very good question.
I kind of feel
leave that
like
up to our listeners.
I feel like it's probably more interesting if he's just kind of dropped back off and does not talk to him again. Because otherwise he could just be like, hey, so who's the serial killer?
But God is enigmatic, and God wants him to go on the journey. Either that, or he gets messengers from God that just say, find Alan Schwartz.
No.
Right.
Okay, no, what if the messengers from God are other people who have had near-death experiences? And so, like, God keeps bringing people back just to give a message to this guy.
Oh, interesting.
What if corpses sit up and talk to him?
Oh my gosh.
He goes, whenever he sees a dead person, they give him a message from God.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
that
man.
Would be creepy and hilarious.
That does speed up his knowledge of what's happening.
It's the catalyst that gives him going to the different places.
Well, see, now we've got an adventure horror / comedy going.
We do. The tone of this, I think, can go in so many different ways.
Totally.
I'm fascinated. I think we're good. I think let's leave the rest of it up to the listeners to go in whichever direction they want. So what do we still need to know from them? What do we need them to nail down for us?
I think we need to know what the purpose of this guy's journey is. What does God want him to do? And I think we need to know more about his person. We haven't discussed his personality at all. We've just discussed his job. And then the various mechanics we discussed. Which one do you guys think is the one that's going to work here? Is our corpses coming back to life? Is this guy good luck or bad luck? What's the side character? Who does he contact with, who's going through the journey with him? is another question.
Can he ever get close to somebody? Or is it just completely doomed?
This is interesting. Whoa. This has this could go so many different ways and still be the same story.
Christopher Nolan? We need Christopher Nolan.
I want two different writer submissions. I want one that goes full comedy and one that goes full existential horror.
Yes.
Because you really could. All right, fantastic. Well, before we close out today, first of all, I want to thank you, Elise, for joining us, and I want to give you a second if you would like to mention anything you would like to plug. Any writing that we can find online or social media you'd like to plug for listeners. Anything you want to share?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. It was really fun. I enjoyed myself a lot. But secondly, if you are going to, if you want to know the true, the basics of Robin Hood, the way that it's been portrayed over the years, watch the show Robin of Sherwood. It is the most 80s hairband-rific thing you will ever see in your life. But it is the one that the parodies are based on. So that is a really good basis if you want to do that. Whereas if you want to know the basics of Arthurian literature, read The Squire's Tale by Gerald Moore. It is a 12 or 13 book series, and it will give you the stories of all of the knights. So you will have a great working knowledge after that.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. And Jenny and I will also go ahead and share a story of our own that we think our listeners should check out. Mine this week is a little bit unusual. I want to shout out the AI Dungeon app. This is an app that I found mentioned on a blog. It's based around those text adventures that were all over the place, where you would type in the commands and Zork and all those, where it would guide you through a story. The way this one works is you type in the commands and make your character move and tell your character what to do, but the text in between, the responses, are all written by an artificial intelligence. So it bases some of its knowledge on stories that it's read before and on other people's things that they've set up, but a lot of it ends up getting a little bit garbled. But it's kind of fascinating to try to work together with this robot writer to guide the story to where you want. And sometimes it goes in really unexpected directions. I started one where I crafted it as being about a woman traveling the Oregon Trail, and about halfway through, the bot just announced, you get on a bus and drive to Oregon. And so sometimes it goes in unusual directions. It's very much like this podcast in that it gives you unexpected twists and turns, and you have to kind of figure out how to run with them. So that's my recommendation for this week. Jenny, how about yours?
Well, it's a new year, and I asked for book recommendations from pretty much everybody that I know, and I have a list of 85 titles to read this year, so I've got a tall order ahead of me. But I read the first one on my list. It's Maisie Dobbs by Jacqueline Winspear. It's a young woman starting, an agency where she helps people figure stuff out, detective investigation type work. And this was the first one, so it's also kind of her origin story. She's a little bit Mary Sue, and I found the writing awkward in places, but it was a very pleasant read. So if you're into detective stories, this one's set in about World War I. And the aftermath in the 1920s. So it was a very nice story, and it was a pleasant read. And so if you're into stuff and it's the first in a series, so you should check that one out.
All right, fantastic. And that is our episode. As a reminder, you can find us every other Thursday wherever you get your podcasts.
Follow us on Twitter at WriteThisPod, and if you've been inspired by this episode and have questions or comments or a story or anything else, email us at somebodywritethis@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you.
And we will be back with another episode in 2 weeks. See you then.
And as they say, cabbage cooked twice is death.